Chosen one, at 7:07 the world stopped. Not because of danger, but because every screen, phones, TVs, airport panels, hospital monitors, shifted to the same signal. A gold-lit broadcast, trembling with truth. The anchor's voice cracked. A world hero has emerged. And humanity held its breath, realizing the story wasn't about the world. It was about you. Producers dropped their headsets. Editors froze mid-sentence. Scripts, perfectly prepared for the morning broadcast, suddenly meant nothing. Because the moment your face appeared on the global feed, every trained journalist felt the same impossible instinct. We're not reporting news, we're witnessing destiny. Chosen one, the newsroom turned into a storm without sound. Not chaos, something stranger. A kind of reverent confusion. Editors who had spent decades dissecting wars, scandals, markets, disasters, suddenly couldn't categorize what they were seeing. They replayed the feed again and again, your face appearing in that golden shimmer, the headline glowing like prophecy, the anchor's disbelief turning into awe. Someone finally broke the silence. We need an emergency editorial. Chairs scraped. Keyboards clicked. Cameras pivoted. But even then, no one knew what to write. Because this wasn't a political event, not a scientific breakthrough, not a celebrity scandal, not a crisis or victory. It was something the media had no format for. Something that didn't fit into breaking news. Something that didn't fit into human language cleanly. A senior editor, a man who'd covered 5 decades of global affairs, whispered, "I've never seen the world react to a person like this. He doesn't look like a leader. He doesn't look like a threat. He doesn't look like a savior. He looks inevitable." The staff stared at him, realizing he wasn't analyzing anymore. He was confessing. Another editor opened a blank document, hands trembling above the keyboard. Not from fear, from responsibility. "How do we write history," she asked, "when history is still trying to understand him?" For the first time in broadcasting history, an editorial wasn't written to inform the world. It was written to keep up with you. And as the cursor blinked on that empty page, the whole newsroom understood. This wasn't about what you had done. It was about what your existence did to the frequency of the planet. Chosen one, while the newsroom struggled for words, the world outside reacted in ways no analyst could predict. In the middle of crosswalks, people stopped walking. Car engines idled at green lights because drivers forgot to press the accelerator. In cafes, spoons hovered above cups, suspended in midair as patrons stared at the broadcast like they were seeing a miracle they didn't have the vocabulary for. In airports, those monuments of rushing, hurrying, scheduling, the impossible happened, entire terminals froze. Travelers, pilots, even ground crew turned their heads toward the nearest monitor as your name appeared under the gold headline. The world hero revealed. Children pointed at the screen without knowing why. Elderly people whispered blessings without knowing who you were. Couples fell silent mid-argument. People who didn't speak a common language shared the same gasp. Videos flooded social media within minutes, a bus driver pulling over and telling passengers, "We're watching this together." A surgeon in an operating room pausing the procedure for exactly 3 seconds, long enough for the entire team to sense a shift. A monk in a mountain temple smiling as if he'd been expecting this day for years. Stock markets halted. Stadiums paused halftime shows. Teachers forgot their lesson plans. But the strangest reaction came from the places where silence is usually impossible, mega cities. For a brief moment, crowds breathed in sync. Not because the world recognized a hero, but because the world recognized a frequency, yours, a warmth that didn't demand attention, didn't seek praise, didn't ask for belief. It simply existed. And humanity felt it. Psychologists would later struggle to define it. Some called it collective alignment. Others called it synchronized resonance. But ordinary people had a better term. The moment the world remembered itself. And at the center of that realization was you. Chosen one. When the initial shock faded, something deeper began to rise in the collective mind of humanity. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even curiosity. It was recognition. As if every soul, no matter the language or culture, suddenly reached the same internal conclusion. We've seen heroes before, but never this. Analysts on live streams tried to make sense of it. They compared you to world leaders, revolutionaries, saints, scientists, icons, but every comparison collapsed under its own weight. Someone on a major panel finally admitted, he's not influential. He's gravitational. And that word spread like wildfire. Gravitational. Because you didn't push the world. You pulled it. Not through force. Not through charisma. Not through perfection, but through resonance, a frequency the human heart recognized but history had forgotten. People who had been numb for years felt warmth in their chest. People drowning in overthinking felt clarity. People who lived in fear felt a strange, unfamiliar calm. It wasn't because they believed in you. It was because your presence, even through a screen, reset their emotional temperature. Therapists would later say that anxiety graphs flatlined for a full 7 minutes worldwide, a coincidence impossible to replicate, impossible to explain, impossible to ignore. The world didn't understand why. But it understood what? This wasn't the arrival of a hero in the cinematic sense, someone who saved nations, defeated enemies, or stood as a symbol of triumph. This was the arrival of a presence that made the world feel like itself again. You didn't change events. You changed atmosphere. You didn't silence conflict. You silenced static. And in living rooms, offices, subways, and streets, people whispered to themselves, unsure if they were confessing or observing. I feel safe. A human word. A divine reaction. And deep down the planet realized, this wasn't about what you did to the world. It was about what the world finally admitted the moment it saw you. That you were the temperature it had been trying to return to for centuries. Chosen one, as the world processed the impossible calm washing through its systems, something even stranger began to happen behind the scenes. Broadcast engineers, the people who understand frequency, signal stability, satellite behavior, suddenly found themselves staring at data that should not exist. The global broadcast network's main console lit up with readings no human instrument was designed to detect. Waves of warmth. Pulses of coherence. A subtle harmonic signature that threaded itself between ordinary wavelengths like light slipping through cracks in reality. One technician whispered, "It's not interference, it's alignment." And his voice shook, because alignment doesn't just happen. It is caused. They zoomed in on the source of the harmonic pattern, and the screen pointed to a single place on Earth, the studio where your image had first appeared. But here's the part that broke their rational minds. The frequency wasn't coming from the broadcast. It was coming through it. As if the signal wasn't carrying your image. It was carrying your presence. Cameras captured it unconsciously, the warmth in your gaze, the steadiness in your breath, the silence behind your expression, not empty, but alive. Engineers watched the feed again, this time without the pressure of broadcast schedules. They slowed it down. Frame by frame, they saw it. A soft glow around you that no lighting setup in the world could reproduce. Not supernatural. Just realer than reality. One of the analysts, an atheist, a skeptic, a man who trusted only numbers, leaned back in his chair and muttered. This is what ISA 60:1 was describing. Arise, shine, for your light has come. It's not poetry. It's physics. The room went silent. Because for the first time, they understood. Your compassion wasn't emotional. It was energetic. Your presence didn't just lift spirits. It recalibrated frequency. A scientist put it in the simplest possible terms. He's not broadcasting. The world is tuning to him. And at that moment, the activation began. People across the globe felt a subtle shift, like the emotional equivalent of taking a full breath after years of shallow ones. Not dramatic, not loud, just unmistakable. The frequency of Earth had reset, and the planet understood a quiet truth it had forgotten for too long. Sometimes a hero arrives not to change events, but to change wavelengths. Chosen One. Once the frequency shift was confirmed, the global broadcast network did something unprecedented. They issued a special report not based on politics, crisis, or conflict, but based purely on your effect on the human emotional field. Reporters gathered around a long glass table, their reflections trembling beneath studio lights. They weren't preparing questions, they were preparing to describe the indescribable. The lead correspondent, a woman known globally for her cold precision and zero-nonsense delivery, stared at the live camera feed of you and whispered, "How do you interview someone whose presence is already the answer?" Her colleagues sat in stunned agreement. Every analytical model they used, political, psychological, sociological, failed. Not because you defied categories, but because you made categories irrelevant. They pulled up biometric readings from volunteer test groups around the world who had watched the initial broadcast. Heart rate stabilized. Stress hormones dropped by measurable percentages. Brainwave coherence increased in real time. These effects were universal, across nations, belief systems, age groups. A neuroscientist reviewing the data said on camera, "He isn't influencing people. He's restoring them." That quote shattered the internet. The special report continued. They played slow-motion footage of your expression, calm, grounded, unforced, and zoomed into the micro-details, the gentle rise of your chest as you breathed, the softness in your gaze, the lack of ego, performance, or agenda. Then they compared it to recordings of global leaders, celebrities, spiritual icons, and historical figures. The contrast was immediate. Everyone else carried tension. You didn't. One expert remarked with genuine shock. "This is the first time I've seen a face with no defensive microsignals. He's not protecting himself from the world. He's accepting it." And that's when the special report shifted from analysis to confession. The anchor, trembling, emotional, uncharacteristically human, looked into the camera and said, "We're not studying him anymore. We're learning from him." The world had heard news anchors deliver headlines about heroes for centuries. But never before had the anchors themselves sounded like the students. And you, the silent teacher. Chosen One. The moment the special report ended, something unprecedented happened on live global television. The anchor, a woman known as the Iron Voice of Earth, someone who had covered wars, elections, catastrophes, and revolutions without a single crack in her tone, suddenly exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. She removed her earpiece. She ignored the frantic signals from producers. And she looked straight into the camera, not as a journalist, but as a human being whose soul had just been disarmed. "I need to say something, off script." The control room panicked. Cameras zoomed in. But she didn't blink. "We report on heroes after they do something extraordinary. But this is the first time I've seen someone become a hero simply by existing." A hush fell over every home, office, and street where the broadcast played. She continued, voice trembling, eyes softening. "When I saw his face for the first time, I felt safe. And I don't know if that's news, but it's truth." Her colleagues stared, stunned. A few producers were shouting into mics, begging her to return to the script, but even they went silent as they, too, watched the monitors and unconsciously absorbed the calm radiating from your image. The anchor placed her hand on the desk, grounding herself, and whispered, "He's the first person we've covered who didn't try to impress the world. And somehow, that's what makes him unforgettable." Viewers felt it instantly, the sincerity, the vulnerability, the quiet shock of a woman who had spent her life dissecting humanity suddenly realizing she had been missing something essential. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes. Not dramatic. Not for show. Just human. "I think," she said, voice breaking, "the world isn't reacting to him because he's perfect. The world is reacting because, for the first time in a long time, someone looks like he remembers who we're supposed to be. It was the most watched confession in broadcast history. And she wasn't the only one. Across continents, thousands of journalists, hardened, skeptical, emotionally armored, admitted they felt something too. Calm. Warmth. Recognition. Not of a hero, but of a frequency they had lost somewhere along the way. And in that moment, the global broadcast network realized the truth they could no longer deny. They hadn't discovered a world hero. They had finally noticed him. Chosen one. After the anchor's confession shook the broadcast world, the global broadcast network attempted something unprecedented, a full-spectrum fact-check of your existence. Not your biography. Not your achievements. Not your statistics. Your effect. Data scientists, theologians, quantum researchers, psychologists, linguists, and even mythographers were summoned into a single virtual war room. The first cross-disciplinary panel ever organized not to debunk a claim, but to understand a phenomenon. They replayed the footage of your appearance frame by frame, analyzing every microsecond. No distortion. No editing artifact. No manipulation of color or audio. No detectable algorithmic enhancement. What they found instead was a signature, a subtle luminous field around you, too consistent to be a glitch, too organic to be digital, too purposeful to be accidental. A physicist leaned forward, eyes wide. This isn't light. It's coherence. Another expert cross-referenced atmospheric readings from the moment your broadcast went live. They discovered something terrifyingly beautiful. The ionosphere calmed. Storm patterns softened. Airport static reduced. Interference dipped worldwide by measurable percentages. It was as if the Earth itself had taken a deep breath with you. That alone should have been impossible. But then came the part no one could explain, the cross-faith anomaly. Scholars from different religions, unaware of each other's requests, reported the same phenomenon. Their sacred texts that were displayed on digital screens around the world suddenly highlighted passages, without human input. Lines about light. Lines about chosen ones. Lines about global awakening. A rabbi whispered, "Someone or something is verifying him." A priest crossed himself, trembling. Not verifying. Announcing. A Sufi scholar simply smiled, as if recognizing an old friend. This is what happens when the soul and the signal align. The panel tried to present their findings in scientific terms, but their vocabulary broke under the weight of the data. So the head analyst, a woman known for dismantling myths with logic, typed a single sentence into the final report, her hands shaking as she abandoned every academic rule she'd lived by. Angels approved every statement before it aired. And for the first time in broadcast history, a fact-check didn't reduce a miracle, it confirmed one. Chosen one. Once the celestial fact-check concluded, the global broadcast network initiated a final stage of verification, a worldwide resonance scan. Satellites, weather stations, biometric servers, navigation arrays, and communication towers all synchronized into a single unified map, a digital heartbeat of the planet. Normally, these systems track storms, signals, migrations, and movement. But on this day, they tracked you. Not your location. Not your identity. Your impact radius. The screen in the GBN command center lit up with glowing blue halos spreading outward from city to city like ripples in a cosmic lake. At first, analysts thought it was an error. No signal should spread that smoothly, that uniformly, that organically. But the pattern persisted. Country after country, continent after continent, the map updated with a calm pulse marking regions where people reported sudden emotional clarity, inexplicable warmth, reduced anxiety, spontaneous forgiveness, a sense of inner alignment. The first halo appeared over the city where your face was broadcast. Then 3 more over the countries watching live. Then 12. Then 47. Within an hour, the entire planet glowed blue. A researcher in the observation deck gasped. The world hasn't been unified by a message. It's being unified by a frequency. The map zoomed in further, revealing micropatterns, families reconciling, strangers helping each other, old friends reconnecting, children calming, entire neighborhoods experiencing a drop in conflict. None of this was forced. None of it was orchestrated. It was simply happening. A geopolitical expert, a man who had spent his life predicting war, stared at the map in disbelief and whispered, "This is what peace looks like before it becomes political." And yet the most astonishing part wasn't the reactions, the data, or the harmony spreading across the globe. It was the final update that appeared on the map. Every nation, every region, every territory displayed your name. With a soft, luminous blue halo, a universal marker used only for figures recognized by the planet as stabilizing forces. There were only 4 recorded in history. But now, the map added a 5th. And unlike the others, this one didn't require centuries of legend, or myth, or storytelling. It formed instantly. Because the world wasn't waiting to believe in you. It already did. And in living rooms, town squares, deserts, temples, oceanside villages, and neon-filled megacities, people looked at the map glowing in blue and whispered the same impossible sentence. "He's the hero we didn't ask for, but the one we've always been waiting to recognize."